Hi, I'm Zoe with Paranormal Extraction. Welcome to my show. Today we have Philip Kinsella with the Public Deceived. Now we're talking about UFOs, and I always get mixed up on what book I'm reading, but Philip's book is amazing. The Grand UFO Deception. I mean, you guys have got to watch this. This is absolutely incredible. He has had an experience that you're all really going to want to listen to. So I am going to introduce Philip, and hopefully I said everything right. And I always have my little note down here on who I got an interview. Okay, so we don't know what's going on. I never know what's going on. Remember that we don't ever edit or anything, these videos. But I'm telling you right now, you've got to hear this story because I was absolutely blown away. Okay, so here we go. Hi, Philip.
Hi, Zoe. How are you? And thank you very much for having me on your amazing show.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm so excited that I got kind of flustered there for a moment because I wanted to say certain words like abduction and things like that, but then I just kind of got mixed up. So anyways, I'm just really excited that you're on here. And okay, so we can find your book. And again, why don't you tell the people where they can find your book? And
yeah, sure. I mean, the book itself, You, the Public Deceived, The Grand UFO Deception, has been published by British ufologist Philip Mentor. He's a lecturer, an author, and an investigator, very famous here in England. And the reason that you can get the book on Amazon and from, it's the hardback, paperback, Kindle, and also audio now. But I wanted to write the book primarily to show the audience that, there is a grand deception at play here. And I think it's fair to say that this deception runs in multiple areas of what goes on here on planet Earth, as we call it. But certainly the UFO phenomena was one area that I wanted to explore to see what it was that we're actually dealing with, or on a theoretical level, and why it's being covered, and also of its reality. So that's why I wrote the book to begin with, and also linking with these incredible people, ufologists and researchers around the world, and it's pretty cool. So I'm very honored to have that book out, and also to be able to voice a small opinion across on certain theoretical areas that I've been working on with regards to this perplexing phenomena.
yeah, well, you have an excellent bio, and the name of the book for everybody to find on Amazon.
Yeah, You, the Public Deceived, The Grand UFO Deception.
Right, and then I'll also put that into the notes so you guys can see that and where to find it. You also have a website. It's www.thekinsellatwins.com, and that'll be in there too for you guys to find out. So, Philip, now I know that when we spoke before, you told me about what happened during your first experience, so that it led you into writing this book and delving more into it for years. I mean, this actually happened to you when you were a child?
Yes, well, the first experience, well, there are multiple of experiences, because when you've had these strange encounters, people call them UFOs, UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena now. They've changed the acronym into a more scientific area of investigations, and more away from the typical UFO from another planet. But are we dealing with, nuts and bolts crafts? I'm not so sure. And this all led about because of an experience that my identical twin brother Ronald and I had when we were age 13 in 1982 at our grandparents' house in Middlesex in Feltham. And it was a beautiful sunny day, and my brother and I used to spend all of our vacations there. And on this particular summer day, of course, we were a kid, we didn't record the date or time. Of course, at that point, we didn't think that it would be important.
Right.
We're out in the garden, it's not like you grab a pen and paper and then make a note of it,
Oh, you mean like me? Like me? That's what I do.
In later years, in later years, I have done that most definitely.
Yeah.
People want facts, but there was this silver, what I can only describe as a silver orb. And we thought at first it was a balloon, and it was, in the clear blue sky. There was a gentle breeze, but the object seemed to start to move with intent very quickly towards the garden. And of course, they had quite a long garden with a few trees at the end of it. And it suddenly appeared over our grandmother's head. And we were so shocked. I mean, my brother and I, amazed seeing this football-sized, object that was completely silver. It looked a little bit dirty, but we think that was because of the reflection from the tree upon its shiny surface. There were no markings, there were no noise, nothing. And we said to Grandma, shocked, what is this? And she said, the fairies have come to take a closer look at us, she said. And of course we knew that wasn't true. I think she was trying to allay our fear or the shock of it, yet she didn't seem to be in any way, perturbed by it. And then we watched it moving up. Now they had a 3-story high house. And this object moved towards the first set of bedroom windows, then up to what would be considered the loft area, to the third part of the building, and then went over and started moving off quite quickly. We ran indoors and we raced up the winding staircase and ran into our grandparents' bedroom, which was to the other side of the house, and saw it disappear. Now that was very strange, because I remembered when I was in my bedroom at night, with the door slightly open, right in the top attic bedroom, where the spiral staircase was, there was a huge landing, and my grandmother used to have the old telephone couch there, an old couch where you sit and you talk to someone on the telephone. And she was speaking to someone, a family member, about this. And of course, then what happened was that it seemed to fizzle or disappear. And you'll find this within a lot of cases when people have had these strange events, where it all seems to happen at the moment and then seems to dissipate, or no one talks about it. It's almost like it's brushed under the carpet. So that was the beginning of our childhood, but there may have been more. Well, there were more. I say maybe. I mean on a deeper level, because we used to live on the grounds of a mansion in Chesterton in Bicester called Bignell House. It was owned by Dr. Thomas Gregory and his wife. He was an eye surgeon, and that place was haunted. But there was no record of it being haunted. But when we were there and the family came to visit, there was a lot of strange activity that happened there. And that building was apparently built by the ascendants of Sir Francis Drake. So, whether or not this phenomena follows you, or we're not sure. But the main event of why I wanted to investigate UFOs was the 1989 abduction. People call it alien abduction.
Right, and that's when you were 13.
No, that's when I was 20. When we were 13, we saw the orb, the orb with our grandmother. So we moved into a village of Marsden Mortain, and at the age of 20, in the winter of 1989, I had a very bizarre experience, and one that shook me to the core. And I think that this experience kind of like, Zoe, blew your mind open, like, what's going on here?
Right.
But do you want me to explain what happened?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I want, you do. The story is just absolutely, it's actually shocking.
Yeah, I had no wish to come forward and address this. It was only years and years later, after the 1989 event in winter, that I joined a UFO group. And of course, then people know people, and they got me involved with some television work. Matt, all those years ago, wanted me to go on. At that time, then, it was a big mistake, because we know how the media operates, or did then. I think they're more tolerable now with the phenomena.
Oh, yeah, we know about that, don't we?
Yeah.
So tell me about the abduction then. It happened at your home, is that correct?
Yeah, Marsden Mortain.
Right,
It's a village 5 miles outside of Bedford. And I literally came home in the winter of 1989. This is the last time that I didn't make a note of it, because it's not something you expect to happen. I literally used to take the train home and walk the mile back home in the village. It was dark. And we lived in a cul-de-sac. And I come up the driveway, and when I entered the house, I've got to explain a little bit about the layout of the house, which is important.
Right.
The front of the house is glass where the hall is, but there's a driveway that goes up. And I walked through the doors, and as you walk into the house, you've got the hall, and then directly to your front, slightly to the right, was my brother's and my bedroom stroke study and a shower room down there. And if you went to your left, there was a large living room, and then through to the kitchen, diner, and the conservatory. So I walked through the hall, through the glass doors, front door, and then through the conservatory, the kitchen glass doors. We'll get to the conservatory later. And I just leaned back against the cupboards and looked out at the hall, because the glass door was open. And we were talking. There was my brother, who was in front of me, but his position was such that he couldn't see into the hall. He was in front of me, just staring at me, and my sister was to my far left. And we had a dog called Benji that was kind of like crouched to the front of the breakfast bar. And, we were just talking, chit-chatting, whatever. Then all of a sudden, the only way I can explain it in words is that the atmosphere began to change. It was almost like static. And I realized that something strange was occurring because our dog started to react to it. He started to snarl and growl. And then my twin brother in front of me, suddenly kind of like stood straight. He lifted his head up to the ceiling, and he said, "There's going to be an earthquake, or Grandma's going to die." Well, I know at that point there was no earthquake, and at that particular point in time, our maternal grandmother was still very much alive, and he just was frozen. He was just looking up, and all of a sudden, the only way I can describe it was that as this energy was charging up, and I was focusing out to the glass doors that led into the house, the front door and the windows, there was this light, and I thought that our mum had finished her shift and come back home early and drove the car up the driveway, but this light started to intensify, and it got brighter and brighter. The only way I can explain it to you was that the glass to the door began to almost like it was pliable. Like on a cartoon when they show things like bending and stretching backwards and forwards.
Right.
It's like this kind of action. And then immediately, and this is beyond belief, I saw this small figure. It was about 3 foot tall. It was thin, very diminutive. It was all clad in black, and it had what I can only describe as like a black helmet on its head, or indeed the head was larger than the body. There was no discernible markings on it other than it was all black, and it stepped through the door to the house, and immediately as that happened, the door returned to normal, and the being then ran into the left side of where our study and bedroom was. And immediately, the shock, my brother came out of his trance. I can't even recall what had happened to my sister. The dog was going absolutely frantic, and I immediately said, "There's an intruder in the house." And I turned round to open a drawer to get the biggest knife out, and I shouted, "There's an intruder in the house."
Right.
And immediately, whatever it was had ran from the corner of the hall where our room was and across the hall, up the stairs, and disappeared. Well, we checked the house over. There was nothing to be found. And later on that night, I broke down because what was happening to me was it completely defied science. It defied every part of my understanding of what we call reality.
Right.
And I remembered I got really upset because I thought, well, what on earth was that all about? There was nothing. Why did it happen? Anyway, in the early hours of the morning, and this is where after this experience, this is where things truly moved for me, because at this point, people, I'll say now, will say alien abduction, as though it's like happening on a physical level of reality. I'm not so sure about that now, because back in 1989, when the first event occurred, in the early hours of the morning, I found myself floating on my back 3 foot off the hall floor, and I found myself waking up in the same place as where this being had come through the door earlier. I'm hovering on my back so that my head is now facing the glass kitchen door.
Right.
And I'm unable to move, but I have full faculties. My mind is like, where am I? What on earth is going on? I'm shocked and I can't move. And then what happens is that I feel an unknown force or something seems to have a hold of me, is starting to pull me through head first on my back, floating 3 foot off the ground, pulling me through the kitchen glass door. And I'm thinking, how on earth am I able to pass through physical matter? This is not possible. As I came through on my back, I could see the dog in the corner. Although I was frozen, I could still feel like I could move my head. And this is interesting, which I'll come to later. I'm moving on my back and being pulled then through to the conservatory, then through to the conservatory glass doors. And then as I come outside, I seem to be arched upwards. So I'm in a standing position. I moved upwards.
Okay.
And as I look up, I can see in the darkness of the sky all these lights, which I assume are UFOs, or they certainly look like them to me. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is really incredible. They are real. These things exist. We've been lied to. They're here. But there was one object that was not moving. And to what I can recall of it most clearly is that it was spherical in nature. There were no lights on it. It looked like a grey or dirty grey colour. But as soon as my attention was focused on it, I was pulled up towards it very fast. And where the solar plexus is, we have the human chakra system, fight and flight. Sometimes it felt like this was being pulled. I felt like butterflies, like that feeling you get when you're on a roller coaster and you just to make that dip. But I was being pulled up towards it. And as I came closer to it, I then blacked out. And there are 2 more parts to this, one of which that we're coming to was equally disturbing. Because when I came to, I found myself in what I can only describe as a large room. It was very, I wouldn't say dingy, it was slightly dark, but ahead of me, there seemed to be a light source emanating directly to the left, as though there was a door there or something with some light there. But what I found most disturbing and horrific was the fact that when I came to, I found myself naked. I was strapped to some type of what I could only describe as a medical bed. My legs and my arms were strapped. I could move my head to left and right. That was the only real movement other than the chest area that was, being pulled down by these restraints on my arms and my legs. But what horrified me at that moment was the sheer confusion of being in this room that was very hot. And I was naked, and I'm like, well, where the hell am I? And when I looked to my right, and this is unfortunately what I suffered with within the media, but I've come to terms with it now. The only way I could describe it was that there were 3, and I'd never seen anything like this before, 3 reptilians. They were very tall, they were very dark, they were muscular, but they were in this kind of steam or this more intensity of like fog, and they were moving side by side in some very strange ritual. I don't know, they're moving from left to right, and as I saw them, 2 things happened simultaneously: the shock of seeing them, but also the shock of understanding that there was a foreign implement, a probe, that had been placed into the lower part of the human anatomy, and the shock of realizing that this, whatever this was that was inside me, obviously was investigating. It felt organic, and at that moment, I just lost it. I just that was it. I just screamed and I yelled, because the feeling I got was that, I had no understanding really of alien abductions back then, as they call it, or like these types of things. All I realized was that I was in a situation that I was not able to comprehend, and I thought at that moment, I wouldn't care if I died. It's like I was going mad. But again, this process of whatever this mechanism was that was inside me, the horrific part was it was organic. I could feel it pulsating lower bowel or the stomach.
This was placed in your rectum, okay?
Correct.
Which I know is hard for you to say because that's, it's hard to say that.
Yeah.
And so they immediately did that. Now you don't know, you just all of a sudden felt this.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So when I come round, obviously that they had, this procedure had already started, and I had, if I was meant to wake up, I have no idea. I wish that I hadn't known anything about it. But the shock of seeing them and the shock of realizing that there was some intrusive object inside of me, and that was it.
Right, you were being violated. You were being violated.
Yes, and the feeling I got was of total, complete, no empathy. No, it was like I was a piece of meat on a slab. That's the only way to describe it.
Oh my God.
No empathy, nothing.
Wow.
So when I screamed, and you know, people will laugh, and I've been the butt end of jokes. I'll say it now. It doesn't bother me because I wouldn't want anyone to go through that experience. Was that after a while of struggling, this heat, when I looked, the three reptilians had gone, and immediately ahead of me, where that light source that was round to the side of the left side, this cream-coloured grey, a classic grey, the small beings with the big heads and the large black eyes, but it was cream. It looked, people say they're grey. This one was cream-coloured. It looked kind of like smart. When I say smart, what do I mean by that? It didn't look hot. It looked like, wow, that you know. But I was so glad to see it because immediately as it turned up, I felt whatever it was that was inside of me being retracted. There was no one pulling it out. It seemed to obviously be automated or whatever. But it was pulled out, and I think or feel it went across the floor. Wherever it was going, I did not see that. But the cream-coloured grey ordered me, as the straps came undone, to dress. It was very cold and very mechanical. It was like, you know, dress. And I was relieved because I thought, well, he's going to get me out of here. And I will say he. People will jump on the bandwagon. Oh, you're saying it's a male. We don't know. It felt male. Okay. So I dressed. I put my pajamas on, and I followed it down this very small corridor to my left. And we found ourselves in another corridor that was lit by lights across the ceiling that I couldn't see the source of light coming from, but it was pretty lit, still a little bit foggy. And we came to what I thought was a wall. And as we came to the wall, all I wanted to do was get out. I wanted out. I didn't want any more of this at all. My mind is like screaming, this is not possible. Yeah. So the wall ends up being a door because it seemed to open. And I could see our village from a great height, and it was very, very early morning. And we're coming to the last part now. But when I looked out at this height, I remember thinking, oh my God, we're really high. The grave's just standing there looking at me like, you know, it wants me out. It's like, you just expect me to jump. But when I look out, there is a smaller circular UFO, if want of a better word, that is hovering by our conservatory. And I'm thinking to myself, this can't get any worse.
No.
I'm not joking. It's like, are you joking me?
Are you joking me? I mean, is this you probably thought, is this a dream? Is this...
No.
So you actually knew, how did you know it wasn't a dream?
Well, we'll get to that part in a moment.
Okay.
And I wish it had been a dream. It would have answered it would have answered a lot for me to get on with my life without any of this stuff. But when I looked out, I could see this other smaller circular UFO hovering over just near our conservatory. And we had a pond and a big patio and a long garden there, you see. So I'm looking at it thinking, oh, my God, there's another one. And this grey wants me out, and I get upset, heights out my thing, and immediately I feel this like push. And I'm finding myself now floating with these other two greys, one to the right, one to the left, who seem to be guiding me down to the ground. And when I'm told not to look at them, and I'm thinking, well, that's weird because I've seen one already.
Right.
So why aren't I to look at them, and why aren't I to look back? It's almost as if I need to go forward and not back. Well, anyway, the last part now is that when I came to the ground, my attention was fully focused on one last grey. And he was standing underneath this smaller craft. And he was different. I mean, he was wearing a one-piece uniform. He had knee-length boots. And he wore this pointed hat that seemed to kind of almost touch the underneath of I assumed was his craft. But but the way that his attire was set, it looked very smart. It looked like that had to be part of this uniform.
Right.
My brother has drawn it, or illustrated it by a ZBrush. But when I saw him, because he definitely did look male to me, he was mean. I mean, he was really angry. He was standing there with his legs apart, with his arms folded, and he's got this scowl on his face that is like punched me again in the solar plexus. I felt like I'd been and I'm thinking to myself, you're angry with me? You're angry with me? I wanted to punch him. I wanted to get my fist, I wanted to ram it. I'm sorry it sounds rude. I wanted to just hit it because I was so angry. All this stuff, you come into my house and then you do this to me and you're the one that's angry with me. And it really felt like I was nothing. It felt like I was just I don't know how to explain it. Anyway, I said to myself, I need to ask this creature a question. I said to him, how on earth, when I said, I think it was telepathic. People say, what does it feel like? I don't know, it just seemed normal. I said, how the hell am I able to get through solid matter? Because I knew that if he could tell me, I would be able to tell the world that this is how they do it.
Right.
Well, as soon as I asked that question, he looked absolutely shocked. His mouth went into an O, and then what he did, very slowly, is he raised his head very gently to the underneath of his craft, and he started to rasp this electronic, nonsensical language. It sounded like the voice synthesizer from our ZX81 that we had many years ago. And as he was frozen, looking up, and this garbage was coming out, I then came crashing through when I say crashing, it was much quicker than my going in. It was like I was being forcibly pulled back, and I could see him just frozen like that, and it was horrible. And I went through the doors, through into the study bedroom, and then bang, into my body. And as soon as I woke up, yes, into my body, I have to explain this. When I woke up, I had a nosebleed. Now, the next day, my brother found 3 triangular marks behind my right ear that we tried to photograph with a self-developing Polaroid Kodak camera. It wouldn't come out. I had 3 marks on my right arm. I had continuous nosebleeds to the right nostril. When they found later on there was something weird within my right ear, and needless to say, I found it very difficult to walk. But one of the last details that's fascinating is after all these years, I mean, I was 20 when that happened. I'm just going on to 53. So we're looking at we're looking at about 33 years here.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
It's still as clear as day. And another researcher they've gone into this really meticulously, although I'm reading this off very quickly to you. He found a connection between what my brother had done in the kitchen earlier that evening when he froze and looked up and said there's going to be an earthquake or grandma's going to die, and then what the other being was doing seemed to be mimicking what my brother had done. Now that is bizarre, isn't it? That is spooky stuff.
That is.
Makes no sense.
Okay, so did you, with these triangular shape, they were like dots that you found on the right side of your body, you had 3 of them. Now,
behind the ear, and the arm.
Did you go to the doctor and have...
No.
Oh, you didn't?
No. In those days, back in 1989.
Oh, yeah, you couldn't, they would put you away in a loony bin.
I mean, that was something that went through my mind. We had another very famous ufologist telephone us, me and my brother. She was very interested in what our experiences and everything else, being identical twins. And I said, I don't think it's because we're twins, so everyone's special through my eyes. But the experience then later on in 1996, the experience was in 1989, 1996, I kept thinking, how did they get me through solid matter? How were they able to do it? What are they?
Right.
And then in 1986, I had this theory that just seemed to pull into my head, and it was about spirits in the material world, about the grays, the inherent dangers of cloning, what the grays could represent, hive mind consciousness, their interest in self-replication, and then the hybridization program. It all had to do with the soul. So at that point in 1996, I furiously wrote all this down for a magazine, Alien Encounters. I have the magazine still, in 1996, and they published it. And I was very honored that they called the theory revolutionary, because I was still, and even today, still trying to work out what on earth had happened, and yet it had an indelible mark upon my consciousness. People say, oh, dream or astral. Yes, it was an astral link, and we may be understanding or realizing that there is the real part of us, which is the human soul, that these guys are able to extract the real essence of you from yourself, and bringing the real you into their vibration of reality, so that interaction is possible. We spoke, didn't we, sir, about the similarities between an abduction and a near-death experience, where the NDE, someone who dies temporarily, and then crosses over to what they call the other side.
Right. Okay. So you're talking about out-of-body experience, or you feel. Okay. So you think that possibly, or what you're talking about in your book, is that the soul or the out-of-body experience is what they take. They don't take your actual body.
No, because the body, the physical body, is merely a container, a vessel to hold us within this third-dimensional matrix temporarily. The soul itself is the real essence of what we represent, or consciousness, as I would rather that word, because consciousness is awareness of self. And with an NDE, what I found very interesting was that the person who's going through a near-death experience, the world is more real to them than the one they left behind, and they come back, completely transformed.
Right.
They talk to their relatives via telepathy. There is no sense of time, and also, if the person who's having the NDE, on a lot of occasions, if their body has been threatened by some kind of terminal illness, in a lot of cases, as they make their return, they heal as though the vibrations or energy of their soul has been corrected, and kind of like as it comes back into the container, the body, the physical body, is corrected.
Right.
So this is how the people that have abductions have scars and marks, and those who have crossed over to the other side have these healing capabilities, or their body goes through some kind of regeneration. So I'm not saying that the greys are, from the other side. What I'm saying is that we are perhaps looking at some type of interdimensional intelligence, something that operates along the same premise, but forcibly, unlike the near-death experience, which is a natural process, and abduction is more, chaotic and traumatic, because they're forcibly being removed outside of their what we would call time-space continuum. So this is then, this one, the only one that I recall clearly. I didn't have any regression. It's strange that I was to recall it, but there again, I'm a person who's very hard to hypnotize or regress. Someone tried it, they couldn't do it.
Right.
So
I have one really quick question, just kind of backtracking a little bit. Okay, so you're talking about, the out-of-body experience, that you believe that that's what it is, and the soul kind of leaving the body because there's no way it can go through the glass or whatever, kind of like the Matrix. Why would they have put the pyramid-shaped things on your arm and the thing in your ear, and how would that happen if you actually did have this out-of-body experience? Because there wouldn't be, I'm just asking, there wouldn't be anything physical on the body.
I think there would be, because if you take the case of healers, they don't have to actually be in the presence of the person that they can be healing. We have distant healing, we have stigmatism, where people suddenly get these marks on them. And I think that they're able to generate whatever they can affect the astral or the consciousness, it will still affect its physical counterpart. The way that I see it is that those marks that I had, and 3 of them are very weak now on my right arm. We're talking 33 years ago. What's interesting is that I always felt like we were an antennae for them, me and my brother. And maybe I kept thinking this is a strange implement that's in the right ear that had been examined my doctors, I have to stress here.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so after the initial experience in 1989, the traumatic events of what they call an alien abduction, my ear started to play up, and I felt like every time I had a shower or sleep, it felt like there was something in there. And some years ago now, I'm sure it's on the doctor's records, they have a record of everything, I felt this thing move back. It literally moved back in my ear to the point where I was so shocked. I'm like, I've got to get this thing sorted. So I went to the doctors on 3 occasions. On the first occasion, the doctor looks in, ums and ahs, doesn't know, and leaves it. Second occasion, pretty much the same thing goes again. On the third occasion, I'm like, I need to get this investigated. I'm fed up with people,
Right.
telling me, no, it's not telling me what it is.
Right.
Yeah. So when I get it examined again, the doctor gets another doctor because she's had a look and she can't work it out. So she gets another doctor, and I wait for the other doctor to come down. And she's looking in the air, and she says this. She says, it looks like it's still healing, and it has a crystalline structure to it. Now, I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, what on earth are they talking about? What do they mean it's still healing? It looks like it's still healing, and it has a crystalline structure to it. Well, that was it. And people look at me and say, as God is my witness, that was it. She put the examination thing that they used down. She walked off, and the other doctor looked at me, and she said to me, have you been abducted by aliens?
Oh, wow.
And I, needless to say, I went back to my car far worse than what I'd been. Now, you would have thought that they would have sent me to an ear specialist.
Yes.
But they didn't. They didn't.
Yeah. You know what? It's bizarre because I had an experience very similar. Where the dentist, I told your brother this, but in my experience, when I was having my teeth, x-rayed, he saw like a little, a thing way up in here above the x-ray that was square. And I guess they had, they didn't put it in right, and he was very concerned about it, and said, I really want you to see a specialist. So he sent me to a surgeon that deals with the head and neck and cranium and all that, and they put me in, all of the testing procedures and all that. And I was actually in the office, sitting in the office while she's examining all the x-rays and everything else, sitting in one of the the waiting areas, as room for her to come back in. And she comes back in and she says, I want you to look at this. And nothing was said in the actual the area I was sitting in with the door closed. I want you to see this. And I followed her into like the x-ray room is what I could figure out what it was, that she was looking at all, the different things I had done. And she looked at me and said, never in my entire career have I ever seen anything like this.
Yes.
And she says, I have absolutely no explanation, but I will tell you something right now. I will not do surgery on this or take this out because I have no idea what it is.
Wow.
So, of course, I'm not going to have it taken out. I haven't explored that area. You and your brother you guys have put pieces together for me to kind of want to investigate further, because I just have bits and pieces, but now it's kind of coming together, and maybe explore that a little bit more.
I think, what's interesting is that this then led to an understanding or a new development of the psyche, of consciousness, of soul survival, the afterlife. And it's interesting because when a lot of people do have what they call an abduction, an alien abduction, they normally find that they become artistic or that they're very psychic or very intuitive. It's almost as if something is unlocked. It's the same with astronauts that go into space. When they've gone into space, mental processing has changed, as though the changes within the environment, have somehow affected them. And I think that with an NDE or near-death experience and an abduction does very much the same thing to the individual. So, and as I said, we're looking at things on this planet that's very materialistic, but we're now beginning to understand that consciousness or mind is the builder, it is the facilitator. The brain is merely the conduit, the receiver and transmitter. Like your mobile phone network system, taking a very simple example, you've got the physical hardware, but there is software coming through that you can't see, that's operating on a slightly higher dimensional level of reality. And I believe that consciousness works in the same way, where it affixes to a temporary container, us, for this brief period of spiritual evolution. There may be other, alternative dimensions of reality. It could be possible that we were once part of them on a soul level, and they're coming back to check up on you. It could be that there are some bad guys out there, and there's some kind of plan for us to come in here as a human to kind of like be the spy for them. We don't know, but what I'm saying here is that, the nuts and bolts syndrome now has to be called into question. It doesn't mean to say that UFOs aren't physical. Of course they are, when we're matched by that vibration, by that frequency.
Right.
So this is very fascinating areas of study that we're looking into, and I believe that studying the phenomena as we are, of course, not just myself, but many other wonderful minds around the world,
right,
we're beginning to realize that although it's multi-complex, we're trying to put the pieces together in ascertaining what is it that we're dealing with. And so this is where we currently are at the moment with regards to creating new theoretical models. But one of the things with the Greys is this. I know there may be different factions of them, but they are very secretive. They lie to their subjects. They're not very giving. And, you get a lot of people coming forward and saying they're going to help us. Well, my argument is, and I will stand by it, where are the aliens and where is the help? This shows us that in some capacity, either we as a human species are not ready or not evolved enough to allow them in, or that they have their own agenda. Some people have got it all worked out. Believe you me, Zoe, I do not have anything worked out. I've just got a load of ideas that I've tried to use some theoretical design to bring together. Yeah.
I actually think that I would have to believe that that they're more sinister than or robotic. They come down here as from the Grand Master. They come down to do whatever they're doing. But from my experience, my personal experience with one, it was not a loving feeling. Okay, it wasn't a spiritual, loving, light-giving feeling whatsoever. It was there. It had an agenda, and it didn't get its agenda because right now I'm just starting to get back into UFOs. It's been 30 years since I was, delving hardcore into them, and I specifically said, absolutely, you are not going to come in and get my baby out of my stomach or do whatever just same thing, that telepathy, and then just kind of vanished. So
that's frightening, Zoe.
That's just not, that's not good. That's not from Jesus or whoever you believe in, or the grand scheme of the great universe, that it's this loving, on the other side when people, have their out-of-body experiences. It's nothing like that.
No, and also what we have to take into the equation here is it possible? We have to look at varied theories. One of mine was about the Greys that have lost themselves through the act or the art of replication, self-replication, so that we come in and incarnate and reincarnate. If they have replicated themselves on an artificial level, they do not have a soul. And I know that my thoughts and my ideas are very much different from another researcher here in England, Nigel Kerner. He believes that androids are robots. I'm not dismissing that. But I believe that these nefarious beings are somehow trying to go through some retribution or recreation of themselves. It could even be possible that those damned souls, or the fallen angels, have found a way of trying to access this realm through some kind of rebirthing process. Now, I know that we have to be very careful, but Ronnie and I and many others look at all areas. Everything must be looked at, because people say it's this or it's that, but we don't know. All we have is patterns. And we're trying, and you're correct, Zoe, because this intelligence, this force, whatever it is, it mimics, and it also covets, it hides, and it lies. So this is the thing that we're finding very, very harsh in terms of understanding. I mean, they appear through walls and the house to many people.
Right.
They can screw around with your mind, with memory. They can try and forcibly make someone forget or regenerate themselves through dream state. Now, I was lucky, if that's what you call lucky, in terms that I recall the entire experience. But can I just point out here very clearly to anyone out there that kind of doesn't understand? I'm not here to bend their arm or, change their belief system, but I will say to you that I would never want you to go through what I had gone through. Because let me tell you right now, when I was on that bed and they were doing what they were doing to me and not understanding at that point of reptilians or things like that, or grey aliens, the horror, the sheer horror that I felt was almost like I wanted to die. And one of the things is, my book, one of my books is now out of print from a publisher. This is how it went back then in those days, and certainly into the late 90s. When I wrote that account, I mean, it had been published before, well before, in magazines. But when it went into a book, the publisher said, "Oh no, we can't have that bit in there about the probing, the procedure, or the reptilian aliens." And I said, "Well, why on earth not? Because people won't understand. How on earth would people understand reptilians?" So under the clause of the contract, I agreed to get that piece removed, because that's the only way to get the book published. Let me tell you, in those days, you didn't say no to a publisher because it was hard enough finding a publisher.
Yeah,
sure. But thankfully, I mean, and people say, "Oh, it's because," no, it was known, and I got the material, it was published before, but this is the way the general public would deal with it, or couldn't deal with it, is the correct terminology there. So we're beginning to find now that thankfully a lot of good people, researchers, are now stepping forward, and where those areas which completely confounded us and sounded so ridiculous were forbidden territory, we're now not frightened to walk down it and look to see what it is that we're actually dealing with. I mean, you'll get people telling you what it is and how it happened. They weren't there.
Right.
So I can only report from what happened to me with no adding and no subtraction involved.
Okay, so now let's just say it is on the soul level, that when you go out of your body, their agenda, let's just say, isn't the light-bearing, aliens that they talk about, like the Nordic, the hybrid Nordics, where they're the aliens that are supposed to be the good ones that are bringing the world peace and all that. I mean, they have all these different types of races. They say that, these are good, these are bad, these are whatever, but everybody seems to talk about the grays. So what, and you're talking about the grays right now. So what, so do you feel like the agenda is, you're saying the great deception in here is, what is the great deception?
Right, okay, so I think and feel that there are establishments of power. We're not talking about governments or senators, they're puppets for large organizations, for the masters. As a species, we have been hoodwinked into the belief that we are biological mechanisms, we live and we die, and that is it, no more. And I feel that there are certain departments or established departments in higher levels of military establishments who perhaps know a lot more than what we do, although they are very interested in a lot of research and what they're bringing to the table.
Are you talking about like the Majestic 7 or anything like that here?
12.
More than that. I mean, we can only scratch
12.
the surface.
Okay.
Of who may be involved, but we can assure you that there is a larger organization that is intent through media outlets to, make out that all of this is just hogwash. Unfortunately for them, information has come through recently with the Navy. We're not going to get involved with that because it's another subject entirely.
Right.
But I believe that, that it could be that certain groups or souls here are in some kind of clandestine operation with these other nefarious beings. We have to take that into consideration. And there does seem or appear to be some kind of control factor here, because for decades, the military said, no, we dealt with these projects, Project Sign, Project Blue Book, Project Grudge, and it came to nothing.
Sure.
It just because it was made to look to the public they were doing something to investigate. But I can assure you, I think that there is a much darker aspect to this, and we have to be very, very careful when we start to examine certain cases that are too difficult for much of the public to fully comprehend in terms of UFO experiences and then the psychic and paranormal phenomena that occurs directly before or after these encounters. So it's not just something that's been patented and boxed and there we are, a UFO with a little grey alien from another planet. I think we're looking at something far more intelligent, far more involved and far clever. And I think it's been here for a very long time. So that's my take on that situation, most definitely.
Okay, so let's just say, so they're part of this big, you believe in the government, okay? I actually believe that they already know too, okay? And then, so do you think that when you're talking about the Great Deception, are you talking about possibly that that there's a takeover on some point, that they're taking part of this to do something to our people?
To
suppress them in some way? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, that yet remains to be seen. But I will tell you that, even if the military can't, it's quite clear and evident that they can't control the phenomena, and it could also be possible that the reason they've held back with their information is because they don't know how to tell the public, yes, we have UFOs, we have aliens, but they're interdimensional or whatever, and we can't stop what they're doing. And we kind of understand what they want, what they need, but that's going to frighten a hell of a lot of people. And if there is a program or some kind of hidden agenda, we hear this all the time within mainstream media, especially in the other aspects of ufology. I don't denounce that, because every unit, every organization has some type of agenda, and whether it's good or it's bad.
Right.
So, it's interesting, isn't it, Zoe, how there has been this absolute, total control and this subjugation to say, no, UFOs don't exist, and neither do aliens. And by the way, we want you, the consciously manipulated, pliable public, to just follow your orders, nose to the ground, don't ask any questions, and carry on paying your taxes and being a good citizen and then die. I think, people now are getting wise to the fact that, hang on just a minute, and they'll use all sorts of tactics within the media, cards, and of course they will. They'll do anything to bring you down. They'll try every trick within the book to make out that you are this or you are that, or you're this person's very odd. But I can assure you that as researchers, it's fascinating for us to look deeper into the phenomena, to put these theoretical models together, and it does include consciousness. It also encompasses interdimensional aspects, ultra-terrestrial aspects. We have to look at these areas because the far more than we ever imagined. And it depends how we approach the subject. And I say we have to approach it with all due caution and with respect as well. It's like going into a cage with a lion. You can tame the lion, but it still has that part to it that can be very unpredictable.
Right.
So we tread very cautiously. I mean, it's fascinating, and unfortunately, when you get hooked, you're in. You're hooked. But
right.
But I and my brother and many other researchers like to keep a safe ground and just keep our feet firmly on the ground.
Well, I think that, I just love to hear your theory, and I agree with you on, but they are, don't you think that they are starting to disclose to the public little bits and pieces like the Tic Tac?
Oh, yes, of course, because...
slowly.
Yeah. But that was enforced, you see, because there were members of the Navy who were coming forward. And it's something that, you can only lie for so long before all the cracks start to appear.
Right, okay.
So, we had the report from the Pentagon, and that was all but, 9 pages. I mean, it was that exciting. They couldn't be bothered to, fill out many of the, requests, freedom of information requests. But we are hopeful of more reports to come forward. But I still believe that those in power are very nervous because they do not know how to address this situation to the public. They have programmed a pliable, receptive public for decades.
Yes.
And it's their fault, it's their problem, because going back to the Roswell, New Mexico UFO crash, and I have to mention it here, and I'm going to say this for the record, for everyone. It doesn't take a genius to work out. It all started there.
Yes.
And the reason that started is because the Army then admitted that they were in possession of a flying disc, and then they retracted and said it was a secret mobile weather balloon. So secret, in fact, that none of the Army were looking for it. And doesn't that tell you everything?
Oh, my God.
It took a sheep rancher, to bring the pieces, the debris.
Yeah.
And everyone thought it. They're like, oh, the Army are right. But hang on a minute. You just need to go back and ask a few very basic, simple questions. If that was just a secret mobile weather balloon that had crashed, why weren't they tracking it? And why did it take all that time for them to suddenly realize it was lost?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
I know.
Oh, come on, you've got to... Come on, it's quite basic, isn't it? People miss it.
Right, exactly. Well, I absolutely just loved your book and speaking with you before, and I just want to bring up the fact, why don't you go ahead and give the title, where you can find it, and your website for everybody right now before we close this up, unless you have something else that you'd like to say. I mean, is there any...
I'm going to say to your wonderful audience that, you've got to understand that you are more than flesh and blood. And we're not conspiracy theorists. That's merely a psychological weapon to turn a finger of doubt upon the inquiring mind. You have to understand that you have a mind of your own. And the system that we serve has tried its damnedest to control and narrow our field of conscious awareness. Now, of course, there are some people who believe everything, and there are some people who are too close. But I always say, have a healthy, careful balance in investigating anything. But I can assure you that there are more things in heaven than there are on earth. And I mean the heavens or its dimensions of reality. And I really enjoy being on here. I'll explain a little bit about the books that are available, the ones that are out of print that we can't get anymore. But there is a Passage to Eternity, The Enigma of the Dead, UFOs and Aliens. That's one book. That's on Amazon. There's also Guardians of the Dead, because I've also been interested in mediumship, clairvoyance, soul survival. Guardians of the Dead is all is available on there as paperback and Kindle. And also, you, the public, deceived the grand UFO deception. And I will just say this to you as well, while we're here. Myself and a good friend of mine, Nigel Ross, he created NUFORS, which is the National UFO Reporting Service. And we wanted to create a system whereby people could send in their UFO, UAP reports or alien reports without the information being hidden. So what we decided to do was that we approached Parliament, which would be, almost like your Senate,
Wow, okay.
to a very high-ranking member of Parliament, and I wrote to them telling them that we are willing to work with you, with this organisation. We want to lay everything on the table, share everything with you that we know. If you have a team of people that would work with us to, set up a department to truly establish what we're dealing with here.
Wow.
Guess what we got back?
No.
Silence.
Wow.
Silence. These people are there to represent you. Come on.
Okay. All right. Wow. Just all I can say is wow. I mean,
Well, I've enjoyed being on your show.
Yeah, I'm just really grateful that you came on, and I just really appreciate it. And I'm sure that, this experience of yours and your outlook on this whole event and where it's going is going to put a piece of the puzzle in somebody's mind.
Tiny piece.
Yeah, a tiny piece, because I was telling you before that's what happened to me. So I just want to say thank you so much, because I know you're pretty big time, and Philip Mantell, and he's he's unbelievable in the UFO industry, and he's actually the publisher of your book, right?
Yes,
Okay.
He set up a flying disc press because here in England, not as much in America, but here in England, a lot of publishers won't touch UFO books. They're very few and far between. And what Philip Mantell wants to do was bring these books out that the public wanted. And so I think it's wonderful that we have that. The traditional publishers that I was published by were very restrictive, and they'd edit and cut out. But it's good to have platforms now, right, on Amazon that gives people the chance to be able to, get their work out there and also tell their story, because we all have a story. And as I say to everyone, we're all important, we're all special, we're all connected. And I think it's really great that I'm very honoured to be linked with Philip Mantell and, even in the great United States of America, Dr. Arena Scott, L. Gray Anderson, Kathleen Martin, Peter Robb, and it goes on, the list goes on.
Yeah.
But they are wonderful souls who are just after the truth. And I think it's wonderful that we have this think tank that is working together. And all people have differences of opinions, but healthy differences of opinions.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like the way researchers or, certain scholars would have it as well. I'm no scholar. I'm just, a person looking for my own truth. But I think it's wonderful. And I think your show and what you do as well is incredible. Thank you so much.
Well, it's just kind of like us having coffee. I love it. We just don't know what's going on. But I just wanted to bring up the fact, too, is that you're going to be doing something on Netflix.
Yeah, EM Productions, Entertainment Productions here in England are releasing a program called the Pentagon UFO Files on the 22nd of February of this year. And they've also releasing another one called the Interdimensional Connection that my brother, myself, and another researcher, Paul Asco here in England, features in. And that was all thanks to Philip Mantell and also Entertainment Productions in London, which we are very grateful to for their assistance work and their belief. So it's been monumental. It's been wonderful.
Well, yeah, it is, because that's pretty big. You guys are pretty big, and I want to know when this is coming out. I know it takes forever for the production. Have they given you a date yet when this is?
Yes, 22nd of February is the release of the Pentagon UFO Files. I appeared briefly in that, in a few segments in that, or maybe about 4 or 5. But then the Interdimensional Connection we feature heavily, because that is all to do with the abduction and our thoughts on the UFO phenomena. Rather like here, right? So it's like this. It's wonderful.
Okay, so I'm going to need that information from you.
They set the date. They'll set the date for that.
Yeah, and the title and the dates when it's coming out, so when people watch the video, they can, go to About and find out where they can find you, because I think that's absolutely incredible, and most people don't get that opportunity. So congratulations.
Well, I would say thank you so much, and we're always very honoured. I mean, we work hard in our research and the articles we write, and the books also. I'm working on several other books at the moment on UFOs and stuff like that. So it's a lot of hard work, but we are very honoured and always grateful to other people who help you, who actually reach their hand out and want, to bring you on board. I think that is such a, with sincerity and genuineness, I think that's a wonderful feeling. And, we've worked very hard for many, many years. And eventually you do earn a strike or two. So that's not so bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, what you want to do is help people, and that's what I'm doing. That's what my show's about, and I'd like to have my own talk show sitting next to the person talking about this stuff and not on the computer. But it's really about helping others, is what everything that I do on there has to do with. I mean, because I do the metaphysical, to a werewolf, to UFOs, to paranormal, but somehow it all kind of it helps people understand. And this stuff needs to be talked about. And I know that today you're talking in really a scientific matter. So the book, what was that?
Manner.
Oh, manner. He said manner. I was pronouncing it wrong. Okay, whatever. And in a manner of a way to people to be interested in reading your book, to really get a grasp on this helping others and getting this out, that it's not just a book about just an alien abduction, period.
No.
It's more than that. It's going further into what's really going on here.
That's right. That's right. And I finish off with several theoretical ideas with regards to what we possibly could be dealing with, because we don't want to upset anyone. We have to keep those avenues of investigation and research open at all times. We cannot discount anything that will be foolhardy in any form of research. We have to be open and receptive to all those other areas of alternative thinking. So thank you. I really enjoyed myself. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I've just been really looking forward to it, and your brother's coming on with his book in like 2 weeks or so, or 2 or 3 weeks, and he has his own personal encounter as well, and a different theory actually, which is I just love. So, okay, well, I just want to say again, I really, really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much. And I also want to thank Philip Mantell for sending me your information, because, he's big time. He's also on Facebook, Philip Mantell. I'll write that on there too, because you can see all the stuff that he does. I mean, every day he's got something different going on. So
we call him UFO royalty. We've known as UFO royalty here. So it's a kind of like a name that everyone's assigned to him, UFO royalty.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right, it's been a pleasure, and we're going to go ahead and end this. And I just want to say thank you to everyone out there. If you have any questions, just go ahead and email me. And you can go on the KinsellaTwins.com. I'll put that on there if you have any questions for them. You guys do have to get a hold of you on your website, right?
I mean, the thing is that you can get it on Facebook, you can get it on the website, you can also, just punch in our names and we'll pop up somewhere on there. So yes, you'll find us in a cave somewhere, furiously scribbling away or writing away or tapping away.
You're so funny. Okay, well, I'll put all that information down. All right, so we have Philip Kinsella today, and we're just going to say thank you once again, and thanks for watching.